There is a patch of soil in my backyard that has killed 3 tomato plants this year. Same seeds as everywhere else in the garden, same water, same sunlight, same care as far as I could tell. And every single time, within a few weeks, the leaves yellowed, the stems weakened, and the plant simply gave up. For a long time, I assumed I was the problem. Bad timing, bad luck, maybe I just don't have whatever instinct some gardeners seem to have for that one stubborn corner of the yard. But there's a question underneath that assumption that most gardeners never actually stop to ask. We talk about soil like it's one uniform thing. Dirt is dirt. You dig a hole, you put a plant in it, and if it grows, the soil was fine, and if it doesn't, you failed. That's the story most of us have absorbed directly or indirectly without ever really examining it. I don't think that story holds up. And today, I'm going to test it properly with my own hands in my own backyard using nothing but what I already had lying around. Here's why this matters more than it might seem. If soil quality really is fixed, something you either got lucky with or didn't, then a dying corner of your garden is just bad luck you have to accept, maybe by giving up on that section entirely, or by spending money every season on bags of replacement soil, more fertilizer, more of whatever the internet told you might fix it. But if soil is something else entirely, a living system that can be read, understood, and deliberately changed, then that corner isn't a life sentence. It's a diagnosis waiting to happen. And the difference between those two ideas isn't philosophical. It's the difference between a garden that keeps failing in the same spot every year and one that actually improves over time. I collected soil from 3 different spots. One is that cursed corner where nothing survives. One is from a raised bed I built 2 seasons ago and have only ever watered and half-heartedly weeded. And one is from a section of the garden that's been getting compost and organic matter added consistently for the past year. 3 soils, 3 completely different histories, and one real question sitting underneath all of it. Is any of this soil actually alive? And if it is, what does that even mean in a way I can actually see and measure, not just accept as a phrase people repeat? Chapter 1. What alive really means. Before I ran a single test, I wanted to sit with that question for a moment because it matters more than it sounds like it should. When we say soil is alive, we don't mean it in some poetic, abstract sense. We mean it literally. A single teaspoon of healthy garden soil can contain more living organisms than there are people on this planet. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, tiny insects, all working, mostly invisibly, underneath every step you take through a garden. Soil that has lost that biological activity doesn't stop looking like soil. It can still be brown, it can still hold a shape when you pack it into a pot, but it has lost the machinery that actually feeds a plant, and that loss doesn't announce itself. It just quietly starves whatever you plant there. So the real test isn't, does this look like dirt? The real test is there still a living system operating in here? And that's what I set out to find. There's a common assumption that answering that question requires sending a sample off to a laboratory, waiting weeks for results, and paying for the privilege of finding out what's under your own feet. Professional lab testing absolutely has its place, especially for precise nutrient levels or contamination concerns. But for the basic question of whether soil is biologically alive or biologically empty, you don't need any of that. You need your own senses, a jar, some water, and a willingness to actually look closely at something most of us have spent our whole lives walking past without a second thought. Chapter 2. The 3 tests. The first thing I did before any formal test was simply observed with my own senses. I took a handful from each of the 3 spots and looked, smelled, and felt. This sounds almost too basic to matter, and that's exactly why most people skip it. But it's the first diagnostic tool available to any gardener, anywhere, and it costs absolutely nothing. The compost-fed soil was dark, almost black in places, and it smelled like a forest floor right after rain. Earthy, faintly sweet, unmistakably alive. When I squeezed a handful, it held together loosely for a moment and then crumbled apart on its own, the way a properly baked cake breaks into soft crumbs instead of either turning to dust or staying compressed into a brick. There were 2 earthworms in that single handful alone, moving as soon as they hit daylight. The raised bed soil was lighter, a duller brown, and it didn't smell like much of anything at all. Not bad, just neutral, almost sterile. When I squeezed it, it held its shape as a dense, compact clump and stayed that way, refusing to crumble even when I pressed my thumb into it.
No visible worms anywhere in that sample. And the corner where my tomatoes kept dying, that soil was pale, almost gray-brown, and dry and dusty even though I had watered that exact spot 2 days earlier. It didn't hold together at all when squeezed. It just collapsed into fine, loose particles, almost like a mixture of sand and ash. There was a faint sour smell underneath it that I couldn't quite place. No worms, no visible organic matter of any kind, not even a stray decomposing leaf. Already, without a single formal test, a pattern was forming. But smell and texture alone aren't proof. They're observation, and observation is where investigation starts, not where it ends. So I went further. I ran what's often called the jar test on all 3 samples, and if you've never done this, it is remarkably simple. Soil, water, a clear glass jar, a good hard shake, and then 24 hours of patience while gravity does the sorting work for you. Sand, being the heaviest and largest particle, settles first, at the very bottom. Silt settles next, forming a middle layer. Clay, the finest particle of all, settles last, and often leaves the water above it slightly cloudy even after a full day.
24 hours later, the results were sitting there in front of me, layered like sediment in a canyon wall, and the differences were impossible to miss. The compost-fed sample had settled into a surprisingly even, well-structured layering, a healthy mix of particle sizes, with a noticeably thick, dark band near the top that wasn't sand, silt, or clay at all. That band was organic matter, still suspended in the water, still visibly present a full day later. The raised bed sample showed heavier clay content than I expected going in, with a thick top layer that stayed cloudy far longer than the others, and almost none of that dark organic band at all. The struggling corner told the clearest story of the entire experiment. Almost pure sand and fine dust, settling almost instantly, with essentially no organic layer to speak of, nothing there to hold water, nothing there to hold nutrients, nothing biologically active enough to leave a visible trace in the jar. I wanted one more layer of evidence before drawing any conclusions, so I ran a simple water test as well, pouring an equal amount of water onto the surface of each sample and timing how quickly it disappeared. The compost-fed soil absorbed it steadily, evenly, without pooling. The raised bed soil took noticeably longer, with some water sitting on the surface before slowly working its way down. And the struggling corner did something I didn't fully expect. The water raced through almost instantly, as if the soil had barely any capacity to hold it at all, disappearing within seconds rather than being absorbed. 3 separate tests, 3 separate confirmations of the same underlying story. And it's worth pausing here on just how little any of this cost. A jar I already owned, water from the tap, an afternoon of patience. No soil testing kit, no subscription service, no specialty product. The gap between guessing what's wrong with my garden and actually knowing what's wrong with my garden turned out to be almost nothing in terms of money, and maybe 20 minutes of active effort spread across a day of waiting. That matters because so much of the advice aimed at struggling gardeners assumes the fix is something you buy, a different fertilizer, a soil conditioner, a bag of premium topsoil to replace whatever's already there. Money spent that way isn't necessarily wasted, but it's aimed at the wrong target if the real problem is a missing biological system rather than a missing product. You can pour fertilizer into dead soil indefinitely and get diminishing results because fertilizer feeds a system that has to already exist to make use of it.
Chapter 3. The Science Underneath. There's also a nutrient cycle running underneath all of this that most gardening advice skips entirely. Nitrogen, one of the nutrients plants need in the largest quantity, doesn't exist in soil in a form roots can use until specific bacteria convert it through a process called nitrogen fixation. Without those bacteria present and active, nitrogen can sit in the ground indefinitely without ever becoming available to a plant, regardless of how much organic material happens to be nearby. This is part of why simply adding dead leaves or scraps to depleted soil doesn't produce results overnight. The biological workforce needed to process that material has to exist first or be rebuilt before the nutrients locked inside it become usable at all. When that biological activity disappears through years of compaction from foot traffic, through erosion slowly stripping away organic matter, through simply never adding anything back to a patch of ground that keeps giving nutrients up to whatever grows there, you're left with mineral structure but no living system running through it. And structure without biology is exactly what dead soil looks like from the outside. Pale, dusty, falling apart into loose particles instead of holding together in dark, crumbly clumps the way biologically active soil does.
Chapter 4. rebuilding what's been lost. That's the belief this entire investigation was really built to test. Most of us think of soil quality as something fixed. You either inherited good dirt or bad dirt when you started gardening a particular patch of ground, and that's simply what you're stuck working with. But what I found in my own backyard, 3 different soils sitting less than 30 meters apart from each other, tells a very different story. Soil isn't a fixed inheritance handed to you once. It's a living system that responds directly and fairly quickly to what you do or don't put back into it over time. The compost-fed section of my garden didn't start out better than the other 2. I know that for certain, because I've been gardening this same yard for several years, and that section used to look almost exactly like the raised bed does right now. Decent structure, no obvious smell, no visible biology. The only real difference is what happened to it since. Consistent organic matter, added season after season without exception, slowly rebuilt a biological community that the other 2 areas simply never got the chance to develop. Which means the dying corner in my yard isn't cursed, and it isn't proof that I lack some natural gardening instinct other people were born with. It's simply the most biologically depleted patch of ground I currently have. And depleted soil can be rebuilt the exact same way the compost-fed section was built in the first place. Not through a single miracle product, but through consistent, patient, biological repair. So here's what I'm actually doing next, and I would genuinely like you to do this alongside me rather than just watch. Take a handful of soil from your own garden, specifically from the spot where things struggle the most. Smell it, squeeze it, see whether it holds together in loose clumps or collapses into dust. Then run the jar test yourself. A clear jar, water, a firm shake, and 24 hours of patience. You don't need a laboratory. You don't need to spend a single dollar on equipment. You simply need to actually look for the first time at what you've been gardening in all along. If you garden in containers or on a balcony rather than in open ground, everything in this investigation still applies to you, just at a smaller scale. Bagged potting mix can suffer from exactly the same biological emptiness as my dying corner, especially after a season or 2 of repeated watering has washed nutrients through the drainage holes without anything being replenished. The same handful test, the same jar test, works just as well on a scoop of potting mix as it does on a shovelful of backyard soil. One more thing worth naming honestly. This single test doesn't tell you everything about a piece of soil. It doesn't measure exact pH, exact nutrient levels, or the presence of anything harmful. What it does tell you reliably is whether a biological system is present at all. And for the vast majority of home gardeners, that single piece of information explains far more plant failures than any missing micronutrient ever could. If you run these tests yourself and something still doesn't add up, that's a legitimate reason to go further, not a reason to distrust what a jar of settled soil is showing you. This is the beginning of something larger than one soil test in one backyard. Understanding what's genuinely happening beneath your plants changes nearly every decision that comes after it. How often you water, what you feed your plants and when, how you diagnose a problem the moment something starts to struggle instead of guessing at random fixes. Soil isn't the boring, fixed starting point of gardening that most beginner advice treats it as. It's the foundation everything else stands on, and it is far more alive and far more changeable than most of us have ever been taught to believe.
At Evergreen Garden, this is really the whole idea behind what we call garden intelligence. Not memorizing another gardening trick you saw online, but actually understanding why the ground beneath your feet behaves the way it does, so you can work with it deliberately instead of guessing against it season after season. In the next investigation, I'm going to take this even further and grow the exact same plant in 5 genuinely different soils, side by side under identical conditions, to see just how much of a plant's entire fate gets decided before it's even placed in the ground. If today's test raised any questions about your own garden, that one is going to answer a great many of them. If you'd like the complete Evergreen Garden Handbook covering everything in this soil intelligence investigation in far greater depth, you'll find it in the description below.